in this difficult period for movies, films in general, particularly blockbuster films, one of the areas that seems to be burgeoning at the moment, it might just be because I'm watching a lot of them, are horror movies. And there are an awful lot of horror movies out there, and genres of horror movies out there. And some race to those genre of horror movies. And some, like Terrifier, for instance, don't necessarily have a genre and still don't have one. And that is the same as this extraordinary movie, Longlegs. Now, it's directed and written by Osgood Perkins, who is Anthony Perkins' son, I think. Isn't that correct? I think it is, yes. And it does, I suppose, seem overbalanced on first view because it's got Nicolas Cage as the titular serial killer, Longlegs. Now, he's also produced it or been involved in the production of it, and sometimes it can make you think, or it can make one think. It made me think for weeks. Myself and Alan, my good friend Alan, who was watching with my lovely wife Debbie, but myself and Alan, we were discussing it, saying, it's Nicolas Cage, you know. And the thing about Nicolas Cage is, he likes to work, and that's great, and he's always all in. And that's sometimes great, and sometimes not for me. And that's one of the things that made us bypass Longlegs. And then this week, Alan said to me, well, it's had good reviews, you know. And we took a chance on it. We took a chance. We didn't change our minds. We were the first in line. The film was still free. Actually, it wasn't. But I didn't mind. Because it's blooming great. And it's not about Nicolas Cage, this. Plus, I'm trying not to give away too much here, but he is in such extraordinary makeup that, and his performance is such an extraordinary capsule that's not part of the movie, really. It's not part of the plot. It's separate. It is similar to the performance that Ed Harris gave in Just Cause. If you want to have a look at that movie, it's a different kind of performance, but it sits aside from the main storyline. It's like Silence of the Lambs, but that's wound in. That's brought into the plot, isn't it? Lecter is brought right into the plot. Here, yes, it's part of the plot, but actually the performance sits separately. The character of Longlegs is an extraordinary character. And the great thing about this movie is that, never mind unreliable narrators, it doesn't give you all of the information. We don't know. That's the scary thing. We don't know. Now, the basic plot is that there is a new FBI trainee, or someone who's gone through the training process. She's Lee Harker, played by Micah Monroe, with a real detachment. I mean, you can understand that when you see Alicia Witt as Ruth, her mother, who is... She's not as florid as Piper Laurie in Carrie, but there's a similar tenor to that performance. Now, she is put onto, or I suppose she looks onto it, because she's sent to an area where they think there might be a killer, and she has a feeling, she has a psychic ability, and has a feeling that house is the one with the killer in. So her FBI colleague just knocks on the door, opens it, and gets shot and killed. So from there, she's brought into the Longlegs case and has a real kind of feeling for that. As her Agent Carter, her FBI boss, says, this, played by Blair Underwood, in a very winsome way, in a very winning way. This was a stuck case, and now it's flowing since you've been on. There'll be a reason for this, folks, and it will be because of Lee Harker's absolute link to the case. I won't tell you too much. So it's about trying to find Longlegs, and actually one of the most extraordinary things is that halfway through the film they do. He's trying to escape somewhere else. They find him and they interrogate him, they interview him, producing one of the most extreme. I mean, the thing is that he's seen Longlegs in Super 8. The video, the titles are in Super 8, really. They're in florid red, and it looks very 70s. It looks like a Dario Argento movie. And quite a lot of the setup for the murders is very long, and it takes years and happens in the 70s. So we do see Longlegs just coming into shot, being videoed by someone, and then leaving. You don't tend to see very much of him until he is arrested and has a scene. He's not seen again after that. It's halfway through the movie. Has a scene which is so very florid that it could overbalance the entire movie if the rest of the movie wasn't beautifully set up already. Nobody ever mentions this guy is Longlegs. He's extraordinary. He's an extraordinary person. He has an extraordinary character, and you're going to be surprised by his behaviour. That's not set up. It's not done in that sort of crass way. It's introduced almost. I mean, I don't know why I thought it, but it's introduced beautifully, so that it just gives you the idea which blooms, which blossoms, so that when that scene takes place, and it's an extraordinarily florid scene, and Nicolas Cage can do this kind of work, and has a propensity for this kind of work, even though he's doing some extraordinary work, he's not chewing the furniture, folks, but there's a bit of that going on, or something similar metaphorically. It works beautifully, because everybody else in the movie is absolutely battened down. Everybody's detached in some way. It's an extraordinary film, because in a way, the film doesn't start until that midpoint, because that is when we start to find out about Lee Harker's absolute involvement in this case. That is when we start to find this out. And I have to say, what is this movie? The thing is, genres are comfortable. You know it's a semiology. It's a handshake. You know what to expect. Okay, here's a college pupil walking home on his or her own. Here they are getting into a corridor. They're getting into a car on their own. You know, the scream stuff of they've just had sexual intercourse, so you know what to expect. It's comforting, and when things either subvert your expectation or add something, like Paranormal Activity, that doesn't give you any nice genre handshakes. It's terrifying. Or it subverts it, like Wreck, the first Wreck. Not the American version, the first Wreck. It's short, it's sharp. It gives you what you might expect, but in a totally different way. This doesn't give you any handholds. There is nothing to grab hold of. Is this a horror film? Is this a thriller? Is this a family story? Is this a family drama? Is this a romance? Is this all in Lee Harker's head? And it doesn't give you anything to go on. Longlegs, whose real name is Dale Cobble, he calls himself Longlegs, has an extraordinarily difficult and complicated way of doing things. So there's a cipher to begin with. There's occultism. Talks about the man downstairs quite a lot. There's occultism. There's killing people who fall on a certain birthday. We don't know why. There's no reason for it. And we're not given that information. You're only given... It's one of those things where, this is a puzzle and you're only going to be given half the information. It's one of those. There's nothing to grab hold of. You can't say, well, it's because he's a demon worshipper or devil worshipper. Not really. It's because he's mentally ill. Possibly, but why is he doing it this way? It's because, I don't know, you've not given me any information. It doesn't give you anything. It gives you nothing to hold on to. That is so frightening. There's no genre handholds. There are no semiotic handshakes. There is nothing. That's the real fear here. It takes balls to do that. It takes balls, Osgood Perkins, it takes absolute Spaldings, grapefruits to say, I'm going to allow this performance in the middle here. I'm going to make sure that it doesn't overbalance the film. That's great direction and writing and everything else. And I'm going to also give you nothing to go on. And to have backed that movie, and quite a few movie companies or production companies did, to have backed that, to say, I'm not going to give you anything to hold on to, is a real maverick thing to do. There are loads of genres in horror at the moment. And sometimes you really want that familiarity, don't you? And quite a lot of films are doing that. This looks like an 80s, Sting. Sting looks like an 80s creature feature movie. And that's very relaxing and very, reassuring. This gives you none of that. That's where the fear is. You're on your own with this. You make up the pieces. You might make them up from your own life. That's the frightening thing. What a marvellous movie, eh? Ta-ta.